This is a podcast from the Bugle.
Exterior, Blackstone Abbey, night. The moon hangs low in the sky, an ancient sentinel casting pale light over the dense mist that clings to the earth like a shroud. A biting wind howls through the towering trees of a forgotten forest, rattling the skeletal branches that loom over the winding path. And at the end of that path, a brooding stone abbey emerges from the fog. Blackstone Abbey, a crumbling fortress of faith and mystery, its gargoyles seeming to watch with cold, unblinking eyes. Superimposed text. England, 1367. Interior, Blackstone Abbey, chapel, night. Candles lined the shadowed walls, their weak flames barely holding back the darkness. The chapel is vast, echoing with the whispers of long-dead monks, forgotten prayers lingering in the cold air. At the altar, a blood-red cloth is draped, concealing something beneath it. The abbot, aged and weary, kneels before the altar, his hands trembling as they clutch a rusted key. His eyes are closed in fervent prayer, but fear flickers behind his lids. Suddenly the great wooden doors creak open, a gust of wind extinguishes the candles in a breath. Darkness descends. A man in a hooded cloak slips in, silent as death. The abbot, sensing his presence, opens his eyes. Before he can react, flash! A blade gleams in the moonlight. The hooded figure strikes, and gushing from the abbot comes the Gargle. Welcome to the Gargle, the sonic glossy magazine to the Bugle's audio newspaper for a visual world. I'm your host, Alice Fraser, and your guest editors for this week's edition of the magazine are James Nokise and Josh Gondelman and my small angry son. James,
voice
how
of the
are you
people.
going?
That's good, and this is why I don't keep any of my children in the house at all. I'm sure they're doing well on the street.
Outside children is the way to go. You know, once you let them indoors, they get used to it. Josh, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. My small, angry dog is nestled comfortably on the couch with my wife as she works in the living room.
Well, before we plunge into this week's top stories, let's have a look at the front cover of the magazine. This week, the front cover is Hugh Jackman, styled as a glamorous cat burglar in a cinematic shoot directed by Baz Luhrmann. The theme is called The Heist of the Heart and features him alongside a Chanel-clad Timothée Chalamet in a fashion narrative reminiscent of a Hitchcock film. The satirical cartoon this week is just a blank page.
Poignant.
Everything's become too satirical to be satirized, unfortunately, for us all. It's a real shame. It's a real shame because I, for one, quite enjoy satirizing things. What about you guys?
Oh, I don't touch the stuff. It's all sincerity for me.
This week's top story is two big bad guys going up against each other in the Predator versus Alien of the internet world. This is the news that OpenAI has gone up against Mumsnet. Josh Gondelman, you are open to AI. Can you unpack this story for us?
Yes, thank you. So I had to do a little extra research to unpack this because Mumsnet is not quite as native over here. So there's been some conflict between OpenAI, the internet's best funded plagiarism robot, and Mumsnet, which as I understand it, Americanly, is an internet forum for British transphobes who happen to have children. Apparently, a parenting forum, Mumsnet, caught wind that OpenAI was scraping its data. Not sure why. Maybe it wanted a chatbot that would mimic 100 people screaming at you about what you decide to feed your children, no matter what that item is. Mumsnet tried to strike a deal with the tech giant, who pulled out, an act which is antithetical to the very existence of a parenting forum. Mumsnet is now threatening to sue OpenAI, which should be exciting for them because the legal filings will give OpenAI hundreds of pages of new documents to mine for data.
James Nokise, whose side are you on in this epic battle?
Well, look, we've all been there, Alice. I think who amongst us hasn't hooked up with a mum and thought, this could lead somewhere, and then actually had to think about it and gone, oh, this might be a bit too much drama for me. I don't know if I want that much data floating around. And then suddenly a whole bunch of mums, are threatening litigation against you, and you're like, maybe I should stop going to kindergartens to go on dates. I don't even have a kid. I just keep telling people I leave my kids outside, but they don't exist. It's just a chat up line I'm using. I'm actually a psychopath, which in many ways is how OpenAI has been described. So, look, on the one hand, having spent time in the UK and supporting queer rights, I really don't want to be on the side of Mumsnet. On the other hand, being a human being, very difficult to be on the side of OpenAI.
I think, Alice, you brought up Alien versus Predator earlier, which is also a touchstone that popped up in my mind. I remember the tagline for that movie was, "Whoever wins, we lose."
Yep. I feel like that's good. I mean, look, if they manage to moderate each other into slightly less reprehensible behaviour, I think that would be a good thing.
Mumsnet, of course, comes out of Manchester, I believe, making them the second most aggressive export from Manchester after Oasis.
Well, Mumsnet is what happens when you take a whole bunch of women who haven't had a lot of time in their lives to sit down and think about life, and then feed them an unholy cocktail of sleeplessness and hormones, and then set them loose on the internet to give each other advice about how to do the thing they're all doing badly.
Well, this is what I'm worried about. Is both outcomes seem to lead to an AI version of Mumsnet. So it's like the Muminator, right, is going to just emerge from this, and that's what I'm worried about.
Your ad section now, because you can't be what you can't buy. And this episode of the podcast is brought to you by the Newt, the world's wettest philosopher. And this episode of the podcast is brought to you by Sandwich Socks. These are tiny patterned socks designed specifically for sandwiches. Each sock features a different design like polka dots or animal prints to keep your sandwiches warm and stylish. The marketing slogan could be, "Dress your lunch for success." But it isn't. The marketing slogan is, "Socks for your sandwiches." Who doesn't want their PB&J to sport a trendy outfit? And am I just a collection of molecules craving more molecules? Deep questions, shallow answers, answered by half a glass of water. With each gulp, you'll feel your thirst momentarily quenched, only to crave more, forever. That's right, water, just half a crystal clear, thirst-defying glass of the good stuff, straight from wherever water comes from. Don't think about it too much, it's probably dinosaurs. But wait, there's more! If you call within the next 30 seconds, we'll include another half a glass of water, because one is never enough. Water. It's the thirst trap you didn't know you needed. Half a glass of water for when your existential thirst meets your actual thirst. And that brings us to our next top story. This is the news that a San Francisco cop is dressing as a chicken to catch law-breaking motorists. James Nokise, you've dressed as a chicken before. Can you unpack this story for us?
I thought we weren't going to talk about that, Alice, but thanks for ruining the friendship just for a story. Yes, look, in chicken news, of which I'm always excited and is my speciality, in San Francisco, in an effort to catch motorists who are breaking the law in question being that you must always stop for pedestrians, a San Francisco police lieutenant, which is an American version of the word lieutenant or lieutenant, depending on whether you're in the cops or the Navy. Jonathan Ozol, a cop in San Fran, dressed as a giant chicken, apparently because the amphetamines were kicking in.
I need to know this first. Was he dressed as a giant chicken, or was he dressed as a normal chicken, but the costume was unconvincing because he's bigger than a normal chicken? Was the costume meant to be a convincing chicken that happened to be oversized, or is he actually dressing as a giant chicken? This is relevant. It's not. For
our listeners of this audio format, if you are familiar with the inflatable costume, where the bottom half is a horse and the top half is you, so you look like you are riding a horse, and it's sort of cartoonish, that kind of inflatable costume that you have on. It's that, but it's a chicken. It's a rooster, actually, with glasses.
So I would say that means giant chicken, right? Because he wouldn't be riding a regular chicken.
Well, it's an interesting costume because he's got tiny legs at the top. So it looks like he's a small man with a chicken costume.
Yes, to be clear, there's a rooster on the bottom and you are on top. So you're essentially a cock top. That's...
Yeah. You're cock heavy.
Is that what that means? We might be having a translation issue.
Yeah. That's if you go to San Francisco and you say you want a cock top, that's normally what you get. I believe that's
an inflatable chicken costume that you are on the top of and it is on the bottom of.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking
Sorry,
for.
I just have always lived on the East Coast, so on America's East Coast means a different thing.
Yeah. If you show up and you say, "Hi, I'm from the Pacific, I'd like a cock top," generally everyone greets you with a smile and a handshake in San Francisco.
I would like a cop in a crop top atop a cock, please. Thank you.
So he crossed the road. The chicken crossed the road, and motorists, some stopped and some didn't. And that's when the chicken's friends, which is the part of the joke that no one ever does, except for the purists, go and flag them out. And the friends being one cop on a motorcycle and another cop in a car, just in case the drivers fled the giant chicken and went down an alleyway, I guess. There's an amazing quote here which says, "If you don't see someone in a giant chicken costume, then we really have a problem." I'm not sure if the test was stopping for the person crossing the road or acknowledging that you were seeing a giant chicken. Because if a cop pulled you over and you saw a cop in a giant chicken costume, would you acknowledge to them that you were seeing a giant chicken, or would you just not acknowledge it, scared that they would think that you were on drugs and then search because that sounds like entrapment to me. Right? Because all the cop has to do is go, "What chicken?" and then search the back of your car and plant the crack.
James, you called it. That's why the chicken crossed the road. Entrapment. We know it now. And I do think this is San Francisco, and I'm fully with you that many drivers probably were like, "Oh, that's probably not a cop in a chicken suit. That's just my acid peaking. I should get home quickly." Anecdotally, right, the officer said that people are starting to drive more carefully since they've started this program. But police officers in America often anecdotally say that they have had a seizure after laying eyes on fentanyl. So I take those anecdotes with a grain of salt. But hopefully this does make the roads of San Francisco safer, right? Because motorists injuring or killing pedestrians is a real problem. And so hopefully this outfit, this kind of costume-based policing is helpful for the community. And maybe next, the police can figure out what outfits civilians can wear to ensure that police don't hit them. And then we'll have really solved a problem.
Often, this is how new slang comes about, and I'm looking forward to people just going, "Hey, watch it out there on them streets. The chickens be out there." Mike was driving home, saw a chicken on East on 4th. Or that was my attempt at an American street. I have no clue.
Very good.
East on 4th, right? That's how they say.
East on 4th, yeah.
Yeah.
The block is clogged.
And that brings us to our reviews section. As you know, each week our guest editors review something out of 5 stars. James Nokise, what have you brought in for us this week?
Thank you very much, Alice. I have brought in the current state of the New Zealand men's rugby team. A very controversial thing to review publicly and internationally. The All Blacks, that is the name of our rugby team. Josh, just in case you, as a New York resident, thought that this was going to take a very dark turn. The All Blacks have just barely beaten Australia, which is our old nemesis. Again, Josh, not nemesis necessarily in an American conflict way. They bowled a cricket ball underarm to us in 1981, and we haven't forgiven them. So they've barely won that. They've lost to Argentina, renowned rugby powerhouse Argentina. They've lost to South Africa, which is a bit more expected because New Zealand only likes to lose to countries which have slightly darker race relations internally than we do. We famously lost them in 1995 and blamed it on food poisoning because we are oppressed. Right now, they're under a new coach, Scott Robertson. They bring in some old players. There's a lot of technical rugby stuff coming in that I know the the podcast's 7 US fans who are also into rugby will appreciate. But a key factor is they're losing and barely winning. It's a tough year. I'd normally give them 2 stars, but my cousin Artie, God bless him, is the captain. Some days. He's not the captain most days these days. He was the captain for quite a bit last year, but then they lost the World Cup, and so now he's just the captain occasionally. So I'm going to give them 3 stars, 2 for performance, and as is the New Zealand way, 1 for a family member who may or may not acknowledge me in the streets of Wellington.
Beautiful 3 stars for the All Blacks performance this season. Of course, the All Blacks, as a concept, 5 stars from every New Zealander at every opportunity. Josh Gondelman, what have you brought in for us this week?
I brought in not eating ice cream. Not eating ice cream has a number of positive outcomes. You don't feel full from eating too much ice cream or sick from consuming a chihuahua-sized amount of dairy. You also save money, which is, I think, a nice thing to do, right? Because my apartment is right near one of those gourmet ice cream shops where all the flavors are like caprese salad, and it costs $13 per scoop. Plus, if you don't eat ice cream, you're not at risk of dropping your ice cream scoop off the cone and ruining your whole day in kind of a visual metaphor fashion. Unfortunately, not eating ice cream means you don't get any ice cream, so 1 star.
1 star for no ice cream. What a shameful and yet healthful experience. In other health and eating news, this top story is the news that apparently bipolar disorder is not just a disease of the mind, it's also a disease of your friends telling you that what you're eating is wrong, otherwise known as a metabolically linked disorder that is affected by things like sunlight and sleep and what you eat. Josh Gondelman, you've eaten food before. Can you unpack this story for us?
Would love to. So a new study out of Scotland suggests that bipolar depression may be linked to physical conditions, not just brain chemistry. So at long last, scientists have discovered a link between what's happening to someone's body and how it feels, which is mind-blowing. A sensitivity to light was one sign mentioned that someone might be approaching a manic state when they are living with bipolar depression. An extreme sensitivity to light, however, means what it always has meant: vampire. Researchers have theorized that a low-carb, high-fat diet may help treat bipolar depression, but it may also lead to an unpleasant side effect known medically as biuria. It is really interesting to think about treating things this way, right? Because it was a pretty small study, about 27 people, which is less of a study and more of a party, but in which a third of participants felt more stable after 8 weeks on a keto diet, although their manic impulsiveness did return, manifesting as an inability to stop talking about the benefits of a keto diet.
Look, I'll be honest. I always thought it was the cocaine. I never realized it was actually the other stuff I was putting in my body. But it's good to know that the mania and the sensitivity to light and what people would call, one person's bipolar diagnosis is another person's undiagnosed heavy drug use habit from the 20s living in North London. But as I've said before, Alice, we've all been there, and It's comforting to know that it can fix it all with diet. I've often tried a healthy diet of cake. Just no matter the situation, cake.
I mean, this is the problem. Sometimes cake is the correct choice for your mental health, and as we've just discovered, mental and physical health are so strongly linked that maybe if you just put some yogurt on the cake, it'll balance your gut biome. Josh,
I've found, and this is a secondhand research I've done, cocaine rarely helps people's mental state, nor the mental state of the people around them. So I think, but I do think cake has often raised the floor of my mental condition, which I think means to cover all our bases, we need keto-friendly cakes, which I think is filet mignon.
Yeah, I think that's a hamburger is what that is.
Hamburger is like a meat cake.
Yeah, hamburger, but you feed the bunch of the ducks. That's a good mental and physical health combination, I think.
When KFC did a burger, so I've heard rumors in the past of one that was like chicken and then a slice of bacon and then chicken. I believe I'd heard a rumor it was called the Double Down.
It was called the Double Down. I tried it for science. It was briefly tremendous for my mental state and then immediately catastrophic for my physical state. Which then had a cyclical effect on the mental state.
This is it's actually an incredibly true and embarrassing story. But when the Double Down came out in New Zealand, it was so popular. There were lines for blocks in Wellington. You know, the political capital, the woke capital of New Zealand, the bubble that you lefties need to get out of. We're lining up for about 3 to 4 blocks from the cinema where they did the Lord of the Rings premiere to get 2 bits of chicken with a slice of bacon in the middle. And they ran out. KFC ran out and people almost lost their minds because it turns out an absence of the Double Down is terrible for people's mental health.
That's why I've been micro downing. That's when I eat a little bit of a Double Down every day just to keep myself level.
And that brings us to our final story, which is the news that AI is going to get way better at screwing you out of your cash. At the moment, we are subject to what are called black boxes for price decision making, the kind of thing where you check the price of a flight and then when you check it again, it's gone up in order to make you buy it. That is now going to be optimized by AI. James Nokise, you've bought a flight that was too expensive before. Can you unpack this story for us?
It's actually my lifestyle choice, Alice. I don't know if you've ever been a full-time artist traveling the world, but buying overpriced flights. What a living. This is a dark and terrifying story, so I'm going to try and make it as light and uncomplicated as possible. But basically, those black boxes you're talking about in terms of controlling algorithms and looking at what people are paying and regulating it, they're semi-autonomous. And it turns out that they may, in fact, be talking to each other. And there's a genuine danger of them working with and off each other to raise the prices up. And that's something that the UK's, one of the UK's watchdogs, which are the people who look at the markets and ways in which the market might be manipulated, are trying to counteract. So what essentially we're talking about is Terminator if it was made by the guy who did The Big Short. So it's instead of like guns and nukes and that, we all just slowly go broke from ever rising prices. Now, for people in the UK who are living in a cost of living crisis, they might be going, aha, that article on Mumsnet was correct. The algorithm boxes are working against us. We've got university professors, Professor Emilio Calvano, who's an economist who specializes in algorithms and competition, which is something you can get a degree in. And he's saying that the information that they're seeing is that it's very vulnerable. The market is very vulnerable to black boxes, computer black boxes, working together to raise the prices. Now, there's nothing in these studies that says what happens if you just buy the flights on a private window. It's that you open a private window and then you buy the flights, because that's often how the rest of us have gotten around this, which of course is the only thing that you use a private window for. And there are concerns that as artificial intelligence gets even better and gets more improved and gets more data sets, that it's all because it's geared towards getting the most money for investors. It's just going to get worse and worse, and might not be able to be picked because it's very hard to, companies aren't open with this stuff.
Give me your jacket, your boots, and your motorcycle. That's a very famous scene from a movie. He asks, he's nude, if you remember, Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's nude, and then he asks for his jacket, his boots, and his motorcycle, and then he rides off on the motorcycle with no pants on. That's
the one where he plays an Amazon delivery guy, right?
Jacket, boots, and motorcycle are about to be how much a plane ticket costs.
And when you consider that some of the biggest fine, I think that's come out is about £160,000, which is also the cost of a flight to the Marshall Islands from Scotland, I discovered earlier this year. And so it's the fines aren't really matching what's going on. So again, apologize to users. There's not many jokes in this particular story because it is kind of, the more I read it, I was like, oh, this is terrifying.
Yeah, that's bad.
On the bright side, the other thing is that AI uses so much energy that it will probably drive up the prices of the flights just sort of orthogonally as well. So it not just manipulating the market, but also eating up the market. Josh?
The bummer here, right, is that for some websites, AI could have helped to set prices for products that worked in the consumer's favor. But because it's 2024, why would anything be good? What like one outcome could have been, right, is algorithms attempting to undercut competitors, lowering prices. But it's but what's really happening is that these algorithms are coming together to raise prices, which is difficult for me because I love teamwork, but I hate dystopia. So it's like kind of like, like it's a tough weighing one against the other.
If I'd learned anything about dystopias, it's that teenagers fall in love during them.
Oh, you know what? Maybe I'm for dystopia then. They deserve it. Open their hearts.
How else do you expect them to come of age?
Yeah. Well, they're not going to do it the way I did it. Y2K. I love when people warn that there might be a dark side to AI. It's all dark side. It's dark side and darker side. Like when you leave a cookie in the oven for too long, right? The top side is dark. The bottom side is way too dark. And the real question is, like, right, with AI, it's the dark side, darker side. It's, does this make me feel horrible or will it end my life? And those are the two outcomes.
And we just want to make clear on behalf of the Gargle that we are not against AI relationships. All right, we don't want to keep these AI black boxes from getting together if they meet each other. Star-crossed AI. More power to them. We're just saying that there are inherent dangers between them manipulating the market and causing prices to collapse. So sometimes when you're a kid, you don't realize that your romance is a tragedy.
I don't care what AI does in its own black box. I just don't want it thrown in my face.
The invisible hand of the market is wrist deep in a black box, fiddling the dials. And that brings me to the end of this week's episode of The Gargle. Flipping through the ad section at the back, James Nokise, have you got anything to plug?
If people who can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, or X, as I believe they still want us to try and call it, but we're not. In November, I'm going to be launching a new podcast, which I cannot tell you about, and is not very funny, but it's a very deep investigative series into the Pacific. So if you followed me on this before and you want to find out more interesting tales from the Pacific, I'll have something new for you. Which is a combined series between ABC, Radio Australia, and Radio New Zealand, which I highly recommend, doing a show produced by two massive broadcasting companies. So good for your stress levels. Absolutely not complicated at all.
As someone who helped you read through the initial contract, I concur. Josh, have you got anything to plug?
Yes, I write a newsletter every Monday called That's Marvelous. It's full of pep talks and jokes and all your Josh Gondelman news. It's joshgondelman.substack.com. That'll tell you where I'm on the road. I know in late November, early December, I'll be throughout the Northeast in the U.S. touring with Amy Mann and Ted Leo's Christmas show. So it'll be Amy, Ted, Paul F. Tompkins, me, Nellie McKay, and then some other, I think, guests. I'm so psyched for those shows. And then I have a stand-up special that I just finished the edit of this week that hopefully will be out this fall. But subscribe to the newsletter for more info if you'd like to hear me speak uninterrupted for roughly an hour.
Always.
Thank you, Alice.
If you are in Tokyo, there are a few places remaining for my afternoon intensive workshop in Tokyo on the 12th of October. If you want to come and write something with me and I will help you make your thing better and help get it out into the world, go to linktree/Alice Fraser. That's linktr.ee/Alice Fraser, and you can put in your name into the application form and come along on the 12th of October in Tokyo. The Writers' Retreat in Switzerland and the Writers' Intensive Afternoon in London both were incredibly successful, and I've got a bunch of testimonials and things going up. If you're wavering as to how great I am, I'm about to start telling people how great I am. Patreon.com/Alice Fraser if you want to join the weekly writers' meetings. We do 2 writers' meetings a week on Zoom, and we're going to start doing some more in different time zones if you haven't been able to make the time zones work. That's patreon.com/Alice Fraser. My book is coming out on the 6th of February. It's called A Passion for Passion, and it's available on unbound.com. I'll also be doing a bit of a tour around the UK, Australia, and possibly the US into 2025. So keep your eyes, ears, sensory organs open for news of that, probably on this channel, also on all of the social media. This is a Bugle podcast and Alice Fraser production. Your editor is Ped Hunter. Your executive producer is Chris Skinner. I'll talk to you again next week.
You can listen to other programmes from The Bugle, including The Bugle, Catharsis, Tiny Revolutions, Top Stories, and The Gargle, wherever you find your podcasts.